Remember Wolverine's best friend from the animated series? Yeah, that guy Morph. He's back in X-Men 97, but his relationship with the X-Men hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows, and that not only includes the animated series, but also the comics. So before we see his debut in X-Men 97, buckle up because I'm diving deep into what we know about Morph, including his comic origins, his resurrection in X-Men the animated series, and what we know about him in X-Men 97. What's going on, Marvelites? I'm Joe, and while Morph is back in X-Men 97, his story starts way before the animated series. So let's dive into his comic background and origin. Morph's name in the comics is Kevin Sidney, but his alias is not Morph. His original alias was Changeling, and we'll get to why it shifted to Morph in a little bit. He was created by Roy Thomas and Werner Roth and first appeared in X-Men issue number 35. We don't know much about his actual origin in the comics, but that he was working for an antagonist group called Factor 3, who was led by the Mutant Master. On a mission to incite World War III, Factor 3 came up against the X-Men, and it's eventually revealed that the Mutant Master is an alien who intends to wipe out all of humanity, which of course forces Factor 3 and the X-Men to join forces to defeat the alien. It's not much later in the comics that Changeling approaches Professor X for help as he has cancer and only has a few months left to live. Well, luckily for everyone involved, Professor X decided to help out because he actually wanted to go underground to prepare for an invasion of the aliens, Xenox, and gave Changeling some of his telepathic powers and allowed him to shapeshift into his form. So that means Changeling is masquerading around as Professor X, and the only other person to know about this is Marvel Girl. Unfortunately, Changeling dies in a battle against Grotesque and was buried as Professor X, with the entire X-Men team thinking it was Charles who actually died. That's essentially the last we see of Changeling until he's brought back to life nearly 25 years later in X-Men the animated series, but he wasn't called Changeling. Marvel had to switch Kevin Sidney's alias over to Morph because DC had the rights to the name Changeling thanks to Teen Titans Beast Boy occasionally using the name. Now with the name of Morph and as a part of the X-Men squad in the animated series, he didn't last long as he was seemingly killed during the team's first encounter with the Sentinels during a raid on the Mutant Control Agency headquarters. In that episode, Cyclops made the call to leave Morph and Beast behind, and Morph's apparent death hit Wolverine the hardest as Morph was, in Wolverine's words, the only one who could ever make me laugh. That was a terrible Wolverine impersonation, by the way. However, in later episodes of the show, we learned that Morph was resurrected by Mr. Sinister, who implanted a secondary personality which harbored vengeful feelings towards the X-Men for leaving him behind. As an agent for Mr. Sinister, Morph posed as a priest performing a wedding ceremony for Cyclops and Jean Grey, luring the couple to an island only to be ambushed by Mr. Sinister and the Nasty Boys. Some of the other vengeful acts that Morph did for Mr. Sinister included luring Jubilee into the headquarters of Friends of Humanity, inciting Gambit to kiss Rogue to feel the ill effects of her powers, and probably most importantly, luring Professor X and Magneto to Antarctica, where they were forced to fend for themselves in the Savage Land throughout a majority of the second season. Eventually, with the help of the X-Men, Morph was able to fight his dark side and assisted the X-Men to defeat Mr. Sinister in their climactic battle in the Savage Land. Morph was then sent to Muir Island to get treatment by Moira McTaggart. After treatments, he insisted on returning to the team, but Moira was very much against it. Of course, in his first battle, he faced the Sentinels and was paralyzed with fear. After that battle, he left the X-Men saying he wasn't ready to be a hero just yet. And the last time that we see Morph was during the last season when he was asked to impersonate Professor X as Charles was recently shot by Henry Peter Gierich. As Professor X, Morph reached out to the mutants of the world, asking them to not strike back at all of humanity because of one bigot. And we see Morph in the final scene as Professor X is being taken away to space, implying that he was still a part of the X-Men team as the series concluded. And we now know that he is still a part of the X-Men based on what we've seen in promo materials for X-Men 97. He does look slightly different from what we've seen in the animated series, however, he has been depicted as this Voldemort-looking character in the comics as well. Given his history with Mr. Sinister and knowing that Sinister is supposed to be the big bad in this series, it will be interesting to see if that past relationship comes into play at all. The only other thing that we do know about his character from some bios that have been published is that Morph is non-binary and has an interesting buddy relationship with Wolverine. It's also said that this will be a lighter take on the character, so while the hate towards Morph being non-binary from haters is predictable and dumb, I can understand the sentiments from some folks who don't want Morph's character to be completely changed because the majority of his character was shaped by his trauma with near-death experiences and being manipulated by Mr. Sinister. So hopefully this show doesn't undermine his already limited character development. If you want to learn more about a character that's potentially posing as Jean Grey in X-Men 97, I suggest you check this video out.